Hello, everybody. It's a ladies' night out again tonight. No Chris, he's still having problems with his broadband, but while the cat's away, the mice will play. And first of all, I'd like to make an apology to the audience, to our usual audience, because those who follow us will have seen us come up with a graphic called the big switch off, and that was purely my error. It's actually the big power off. And when I thought about it, I thought, why did I just unconsciously type switch off? Because we do think about switching our lights off, don't we? And we don't think about who's behind the reason that we have to do that, that we have to cut down on all of our costs, not just power. So, and we don't realize that it's big power, the big power companies that are robbing us for their own profit. So we saw that Dpac, which is Disabled People Against the Cuts, they've been going for a lot of years now. Some of you may not have heard of them, but we've got a very vocal and powerful woman, Paula Peters, speaking with us tonight about, they had an event called the Big Power Off on April the 1st, which was, I think, Saturday, might have been Friday. And I'm pretty sure it was just so well attended. I think it was 6 million was the reach on Twitter alone. And I would just really like for Paula to come in, and we're going to talk about how that went and what people can do and the reason why. Why did you do it, Paula?
Good evening, Liz, and thank you for having me on, and good evening everyone watching. Well, I'd like to start off by saying it was actually Sheffield Dpac that come up with the idea with the campaign. So Jen and David and everyone at Sheffield Dpac, National Dpac, have supported the campaign, but I think kudos needs to, and recognition really needs to go to Sheffield Dpac and all the hard work that they've been doing for this campaign. So, you know, we're really proud of the work that Sheffield Dpac's been doing on this. You know, obviously, you know, when we heard, you know, a few months ago that Ofgem were going to increase, you know, the price cap by nearly £700. So, you know, you're looking at the average bill of like £1,700 to £1,900 a year. But, you know, the energy companies' standing charges have literally tripled and the unit costs have doubled. And this is before you use, you know, any power at all. And, you know, we've got 4 million disabled people in abject poverty in the UK. And for 14 million disabled people, you know, you've got extra costs, you know, with your disability. And there's over, you know, 1 in 6, I think, families have a disabled person within the household. And, you know, these costs are just so unaffordable. I mean, what we've seen inflation skyrocket. It's over 7%. You know, you've seen food prices just triple, you know, fuel prices at the forecourts. You know, council tax has gone up, the water bill's gone up, council tax has gone up, you know, and it's just like this. But the horror stories we're getting of disabled people unable to, you know, afford these costs, and this is before this price cap came into play. You know, we've had, and I think it's so important why the media need to look at the use of language, because they talk about this as a recent cost of living crisis. You know, when you go back to the Thatcher era, when the privatisation of the energy companies really started, you know, the utility costs have risen like over 40%. And, you know, it's just become, and it's corporate greed. You know, this is a cost, you know, a cost of greed crisis. You know,
Yeah.
We're paying for the shareholders' greed. We're paying for the CEO's greed, and we're paying for the government's greed, you know. And we need to talk about the MPs and their little dibbings in the taxpayers' you know, paying for their energy costs on expenses, which is absolute, you know, one rule for them and one rule for us. kind of
Yeah.
thing. But, you know, the protest, it was on the 1st of April, the first one, which is the day that the cap come into effect. And obviously, you know, council tax rose as well and everything else. So, but, you know, Sheffield Dpac done some absolutely amazing work, you know, and it was about sharing your personal stories. If you could reduce your energy consumption on the day, to send a powerful message to the shareholders, to the CEOs, you know, we're going to take the power back and hit these greedy companies where it hurts, and that's in the profit margin. And I think if we can have, you know, nearly 6 million join in on the 1st of April, you know, if people can, you know, share their stories for the 10th, which is this coming Sunday, but also if they can, but we know not everyone can't, because there are disabled people and older people use equipment and who can't. But if people can reduce their energy consumption on the 10th, share their stories, but also share the links when you see hashtag big power off, you know.
Yeah, that's the 7th, isn't it? The 7th. Is that Thursday?
Yeah, the Twitter
No,
storm is
Friday.
on the 7th, right,
Yeah.
which is tomorrow. So the Twitter storm is 7 till 9 p.m. So if people can join in that, hashtag big power off, and share the links as widely as you can. Tag people in you haven't before. So let's get the hashtag trending. Let's really get the social reach just exploding out there to people who don't know about this, who can join in. And this is one campaign the government can't stop, because it's from your home. You know, they can't stop you taking the power back and giving a clear message to the energy companies. We've had enough. We're going to take the power back and we're going to hit them in the profit margin. And that's one thing they will understand, is when we say enough is enough, we're going to hit them hard in the profits.
Yeah, well, there's no such thing, I think, as an energy crisis for MPs. I think it was, well, I do know, because you told me this morning, Paula, that £262,000, 454 pence, was claimed by MPs purely for their costs in their second homes, not even in their first homes, but for the cost of gas and electricity in their second homes. That's nearly it's over £250,000. And I was saying to you before the show came on that I first met you when you all Dpac did a protest in the House of Commons. And I just because I'm sure most people have heard of Dpac, but just tell us a little bit about, you know, how long has this been going on? Because I know, and you know, that this has been going on for many years. I think, you know, the amount of people that we've lost to benefit cuts, to power cuts, to, you know, just cuts in living standards, and people fall by the wayside in the thousands, don't they?
Well, Dpac actually began on the 3rd of October 2010 to oppose and fight back against the vicious and brutal austerity measures that the coalition government, which was Conservatives and Lib Dems, when they formed in the summer of 2010, they came out with the emergency budget over the summer of brutal, you know, social security cuts and social care cuts. And you know, disabled people have been hit by over nearly £30 billion worth of social security cuts, social care cuts. There's, you know, cuts to the NHS, you know, cuts to local services, the libraries, every service we use, you know, cuts to access budget to public transport. And, you know, Dpac were instrumental in bringing the complaint for the investigation for the United Nations Conventions of the Rights of Disabled People. And, you know, it's not easy to get an investigation like that. But, you know, in 2017, the UN ruled that the austerity cuts were having a catastrophic impact on disabled people's lives. And when you look at, social care, the British Medical Journal actually said, that there's been over 120,000 people who have died with cuts to social care. And you look at the true number with cuts to employment and support allowance, work capability assessment will never be known. And I'm sorry for everyone in mental distress, which could be triggering. There have been people who've taken their own lives, and we remember, every single person. We remember, Mark Wood, who, starved to death because he lost his support. We remember Jodie Whiting, who took her own life after a personal independence payment, assessment, and she lost her support. And it's got to be absolutely clear to the wider public, who, we've had some really patronising comments over the last few days, about how to keep warm and everything. This is an ideological, political attack on us. It's driven to cause the maximum harm, the maximum distress, and to cause, to make us give up, basically, and not able to claim what we're entitled to. But I think the wider attack here is, the government wants to get rid of its duty of care to us from the state. It's about the abolition of the welfare state in its entirety and privatise the NHS. And you are seeing that, especially before the pandemic, it was becoming a huge problem. But since the pandemic, and obviously we're still in a pandemic, we're definitely seeing a lot more people now coming forward to us who are saying, we've been told we have to pay private for mental health care. We're having to they're wanting us to pay private for a hip operation, or we can't get our ears syringed, the NHS funding's been taken, some cancer support's been removed, and people haven't got this money. You pay, and this is what I think a lot of the wider public seem to really struggle with. You pay for the NHS and social care through your national insurance contributions. That is what you pay for your state pension. That is what you pay national, pay for your NHS, pay for social care. And you're also paying for that and for your social care with council tax, with the social care levy at local level as well. So and that care should be, that funding and that care should be there. And that's why Dpac is fighting for a fully funded social care system, free at the point of need, paid for by general taxation. We want to make care fair, and seeing what the government are trying to do, cap for asking older people to pay for their care by losing their home is an absolute travesty. But when you're seeing disabled people who are having to pay up to £200 a week for their social care packages, they haven't got it. And you're seeing local councils like in Birmingham, they're chasing disabled people for social care debt and sending bailiffs round to their doors and causing a great deal of distress. So going back to 2010, when Dpac formed, we carried on the tradition, the great tradition set by Direct Action Network, Disabled People's Direct Action Network, which are now reforming, and the amazing, brilliant work that they did. And our campaign was built on peaceful civil disobedience, which is direct action. But also, we've learnt the law by taking the government to court. The formal complaint to the United Nations, there's a third report that's been compiled to include the pandemic and the last 5 years of where we're at. And I think we need to talk about the pandemic as well, because for disabled people, it's been catastrophic. The government has just thrown us under a bus, said we're disposable and expendable. Thousands of disabled people have do not resuscitate placed on their records without knowledge, without this consent, without the knowledge of you know, the family, if they ended up in hospital with coronavirus, the access for coronavirus information during the pandemic from the government wasn't accessible. Often it was very limited. The councils weren't very supportive, and they just thought, you know, we were completely worthless. And, you know, when you saw the heinous piece of legislation, the Coronavirus Act, which, you know, back at the start of the pandemic, the medics were given extraordinary powers to decide who lived and who died. And if you were over 65, you weren't given access to an ICU bed or a ventilator. And that was the same for disabled people. When disabled people had feeding tubes or it needed equipment, you couldn't get hold of it. And it was putting disabled people at further harm. And it needs to be stressed loud and clear. And this is from the Office of National Statistics, that 6 out of 10 coronavirus deaths have been that of disabled people. And that is an absolute travesty. I mean, my aunt was one of those. She had MS, and she was put in residential care in April 2020. She caught coronavirus in nursing care. She was put in hospital, and she died 2 days after my birthday in July 2020. And there are thousands, millions of stories like this. You know, the government need to be held to account for what happened during the pandemic, but also there needs to be an independent coronavirus inquiry, which the government need to be held to account for what happened to disabled people through the pandemic, what happened to older people through the pandemic, and the absolute shoddy, you know, decisions they made that put not only us at risk, they put frontline NHS staff at risk with, you know, with very scant access to personal protective equipment and also for personal assistance. The whole thing has just been an absolute mess. And, you know, the governments, I think, are hoping that, you know, we'll forget all about that. But yeah, Dpac's been going 12 years. Sheffield Dpac, our great group in Sheffield's been going for quite some time. We have local groups around the country. So if anybody is curious to know more about Dpac, we've got a website, a Twitter page, Facebook page and a group. We've got Instagram, got online shop. You can buy a t-shirt if you can afford that. But I would say to everybody watching, trade unions and that, please, you know, affiliate to Dpac, even as a campaign group, affiliate to us. And you know, just joining our campaigns, like this brilliant campaign that Sheffield Dpac started called the Big Power Off. The more of us collectively, you know, resist this government and resist the energy companies by saying, you know what, enough is enough. We're going to take the power back. It gives a clear message to the energy companies that we are not going to take this anymore, and we're going to hurt you where it hurts, in the profit margin. And I think if more people did that, it makes them sit up and think twice. Hold on, the public are really angry, they're pissed off, they've had enough. And, you know, collective action really, really does work. And it's together, united, do we have a really, really powerful voice.
Well, I'm, you know, just blown away by what you say, as always. And when I'm from independent media, I started Unity News with a friend. At the time, we were called Unity March, and I had a tumour in my head, and I won't go into it, but the upshot of it was that I burned through my savings and ended up facing the world of benefits. And I was absolutely distraught and shocked. The shock of me doing that was worse than the illness I'd just gone through. It was worse. And I went on TV, I went on the Vic Derbyshire show, I went on radio, I went everywhere I could. And I said, it's all right for me, I'm going to get better. But what about the people who aren't going to get better, that need our support? And there is no support already, and it's declined since then. And I was so angry that I said to a bunch of friends, you know, and old colleagues, we've got to do something about this. And they said, we do. So we started up Unity March, and we said do you remember people used to get abused online? They'd say, oh, if you're so bothered about something, go and join a protest. And everybody would say, look, I'm disabled, I'm at home, I'm a carer, I can't get out to these protests, I can't afford to go to London for a protest. So we said, what we'll do is we'll be the feet on the ground, those of us that are able, we'll be the feet on the ground, and you share all our articles around the internet, which is what they did. We had about 2,000 warriors. We called them the Unity Warriors. They weren't keyboard warriors anymore. They were Unity Warriors, and proud of it. And we ended up with an audience of something like 30 million people, and we had a Unity America and Unity Australia, and it was becoming global. And then Facebook started to shut us down, as they started to shut you down, because we were getting too strong. And we were telling the stories of people that one gentleman, he'd been sleeping in his wheelchair for 3 weeks because he couldn't get a social care package. And he was just sleeping in his own things, in his own dirt for 3 bloody weeks. And and that wasn't the worst of it. The people that died, took their own lives. I've known many of them, and my son has been one that almost was in that position. I myself got in such a mess, and then the benefits people, it's absolutely despicable. They're like Nazis, and how they can sleep at night, I really don't know. But I get so angry about it. And that's why now a bit of it's not positive, but it is positive for us, is that Jen is now completely embroiled with Extinction Rebellion. We're really proud to have her in our movement of movements. And so we really are gathering together, all of us, and regardless of your ability or not your ability to do anything, we can all voice something. We can all switch our kettle off for the day. We can all do something, and even if it's just sharing or retweeting other people's posts, that's perfectly fine. That's, in fact, without that, nobody would know anything, would they, Paula?
I think, that's the really important point to stress. I mean, and I think that's one of the beauties of Dpac as well. We know that not all disabled people and, carers and everything can get out onto a street protest and everything. And that is what the power of online, on social media, is so important, because it gives everyone who's able to have a voice. But we also know that, there are over 5.4 older people who do not have access to the internet and cannot, use it. And a third of, 14 million disabled people have no access to the internet, and it's not accessible to use. And the problem is, with everything going online, like, the NHS, universal credit, PIP is, if you've got an email, they're trying to push you to fill out your PIP application online. All of our services are going online, which is, completely inaccessible for many. So it's a way to deny access to healthcare. It's a way to deny access to the benefits system and everything like that. It's another barrier to which it excludes disabled people, older people, low-income workers. And there was a story during the pandemic, because I've been involved with the library campaign down in my neck of the woods in Bromley, with the Bromley library workers who were on strike for a year to fight against the libraries being turned into gyms, and the trained library staff being removed out of the libraries. And there was a story in Croydon, because they're fighting to, a lot of libraries have been removed. of a person who didn't have access to the internet at home, couldn't afford broadband. He was sitting outside the steps of a library in Shirley in South Croydon, trying to access the library's broadband so he could job search during the pandemic, And there are thousands of stories like that across the country. And it's really important to stress this, that since 2010, there's been 810 libraries that have gone, completely closed. It's more than that now, I suspect, but this was from a Freedom of Information request. And there's been over 32,500 computers removed from the libraries. Now, if you haven't got access to the internet at home and you're on universal credit and got to do your job search, you need that computer. It's a lifeline. So what I'd say to everybody, you see a library campaign, join it, because you're not just fighting for access for yourself, but for your children. And there are an awful lot of students who use the libraries as a quiet place to revise for exams and everything, because they can't, revise at home because the home life might be chaotic or, too noisy or too, so they need that space. The libraries are the beating heart of our communities, as is our transport system is, a lifeline for us to get from A to B. And what we're seeing with the government wanting to remove a third of platform staff, close ticket offices at rail stations, it's going to impact on disabled people's ability to get about. And also it's about our safety as well. So when you're seeing the RMT, TSSA, the transport unions gearing up for that campaign, it's important to support that one as well.
Yeah, definitely. And we've had stories of a lady who was told to prostitute herself so that she could afford broadband or a computer to fulfill her job seeker responsibilities. And also the young people who've mugged people for their mobile phone so that they can sign into their job seeker thing. Otherwise, they get sanctioned. If they don't search for jobs, they get sanctioned and they get absolutely zero money for up to 3 months. And it's happening every minute of every day. We don't have the data because the DWP say that they don't have to give out that data because it's the Privacy Act. But the tales of degradation that people are forced into, and if only we're supposed to be supporting people back into work, back into, if they've fallen through the cracks of the social care net, which just about everybody has now, haven't they? If you've reached the point where you need benefits, you're as low as you're going to get, and you think you can't go any lower, wait until you've been on universal credit for 3 months, and then they sanction you for 3 months because you didn't apply for a job as a bank manager when you're a qualified woodcutter. Do you know what I mean? They're telling you to take jobs that are completely out of your zone.
I think that's really important to stress that. I read today, benefit sanctions now are at pre-coronavirus pandemic levels. Now they're skyrocketing, but also sanction level, there are sanctions, we knew of, and this is back in 2012, I think. There was, there are disabled people who've been sanctioned for 3 years. There are 3-month sanctions, there are 6-month sanctions, and there are 3-year sanctions. And it is really, really important to do that. I think the underlying thing of all of this is the government's just ripped the safety net away. There is no safety net in the welfare state anymore. There really isn't. And, we're hearing, it's just the fear. I mean, the DWP, because of people having fear of brown envelopes, they changed them to white. Well, the problem is people are having a fear of any post. They're having a fear of the postman turning up on the door because it's that, am I going to get assessed today? Am I going to lose my money today? You live with this permanent black cloud above your head with financial insecurity all the time, and they have the power to remove it at any time, and that's not helping pay the bills. I mean, you know, I read a story that Dpac Sheffield shared today of a, you know, disabled man who can't afford to charge his mobility scooter, because a full charge for a mobility scooter is 45 minutes to an hour, and he can't afford to do that. And he said, you know, it's impacting, you know, on my quality of life that I can't get out. And I bet there are thousands of stories like that where, you know, disabled people who use mobility scooters, power wheelchair, you do need to charge them for 45 minutes to an hour to fully charge the batteries. And obviously with the cost of per unit per hour and the extortionate costs that, you know, all of the energy companies, let's talk about, you know, all of them, not just the big six, but all of them, you know, that are making. And also, you know, some of the green energy companies that are actually outside the price cap, you know, Ecotricity being one of them. And they are charging, I mean, their units per hour and the cost of their standing charges are so expensive. I mean, I'm with Ecotricity, and, you know, I'm what is called a below average user for years. And I think this is really important to stress this. For many years, disabled people, because of austerity and and obviously the pandemic on top of that, and we've had several years of benefit freezes, so the money hasn't gone up at all, but the costs have gone up year on year, further pushing disabled people into poverty. And energy prices have risen, you know, everything's risen, but the money hasn't, and it's, you know, plunged us all further into poverty. And, you know, for years, I mean, for my own story, you know, for years I've been you know, turning off, you know, living with the heat in one room, you know, thermostat down at 14 degrees, as low as it can go. I mean, I've got rheumatoid arthritis, so it's important to keep warm. I've got an autoimmune condition, so it's important to keep warm. And I'm also asthmatic, so the cold can affect my chest. You know, this past winter for me has been absolutely torturous. I've had no sleep for nearly 3 months because I could not bear to lay down because of the pain. But I can't afford to have my heating on 24/7. I'm having it on for an hour in the morning, an hour in the evening, my thermostat on 47. So I'd like this question answered, Ecotricity. Why the fuck did you put my bill up £130 a month when I was in credit by 50 quid? You know, this is something, you know, if you're in credit with your bills, right, go back to your energy companies and say they are breaking their license, right? Start complaining about it because they don't like you knowing these things. But I can't afford to have my heating on all the time. Who can? Before the price cap, you know? The precarious work's rising, the gig economy's rising, the 0 hours, the firing and rehiring. I mean, look what's happened to the P&O workers, you know?
Well,
it's an absolute travesty, that. But what you've seen during the pandemic is over 182% rise in universal credit claims when millions lost their jobs, going into, you know, the welfare state for the first time, and all the horrors that brings.
They're going to find out.
For the last month, you know, the last 2 months, you saw the DWP change the universal credit rules, where you used to have 3 months in your field to look for a job. Now it's 4 weeks. Who can find a job in 4 weeks? And then you've got to apply for a job outside your field when you haven't got the experience. Well, who's going to take you on if you haven't got the experience? But we've had disabled people in the work-related activity group. I mean, I had somebody in my neck of the woods in Bromley when we had a store outside a job centre. She said they told me to apply for work in a strip club and work as a stripper in a strip club, you know, or, you know, go into the sex industry. And she turned around and said, I won't do that. And she said, and then they threatened to sanction me. Then we had another person who she has dreadful depression, who they sanctioned her because the interviewer went back to the DWP and said she wasn't happy enough when they interviewed her. So she was sanctioned 3 months' money because she wasn't happy enough. Well,
Yeah.
if you're really depressed and you've got the DWP on your back, what are you supposed to be? Jumping for joy? I don't
But
think so.
we had last week or the week before last, we had one young man who was sanctioned for attempting to commit suicide. You
Yeah.
know, so and I just wanted to answer your question a little bit about Dale Vince, who's the owner of Egotricity, we call it here. Lots of people may know I live in Stroud, the home of Extinction Rebellion, and also the home of Dale Vince, who actually probably owns my home. He owns most of Gloucestershire now. And he's a very green man, but he's an entrepreneur and he's a capitalist. And he came to Stroud many years ago and saw the windmills on the hills and the wind on the hills and thought, oh, hang on, there's an opportunity here. And yeah, his prices are dearer than the big six. And he says that's because he plows the money back into the renewables that supply him. But that, I'm not sure that's quite true, because he lives in a castle. You know, he lives in a beautiful castle. He owns most of the county. So he's not got, he's like the MPs, you know, getting their second homes, gas and electricity paid for. There's no cost of living crisis for the likes of him. And also, what about the people on prepaid meters? You know, they're on about this loan, this enforced loan. So basically, they're going to, mafia style, give you some money and then come around and break your legs if you don't pay it back. It's like that, isn't it? Because what's it going to do to people, especially those on prepaid meters?
I mean, people have been calling for a windfall tax on, you know, the energy companies. But it's got to be said that the senior Tories have actually blocked that call for a windfall tax on the energy companies, because Kwasi Kwarteng, let's talk about Kwasi Kwarteng, and business secretary actually turned around and said, oh, that's not a good move for the investors, you know, to put a windfall tax on them. But let's talk about the shareholders, shall we? Let's talk about the 200 billion that shareholders have made from the investment in energy companies since 2010. 200 billion. Yeah. Jesus Christ. Yeah. This is, you know, and the fact that the energy companies, you know, before the cap rise, they had 1 billion profits. What the fuck? Come on. You know, I couldn't even begin to imagine how much money that is in a room, but 200 billion. But let's talk about the MPs, because, you know, I read today is actually what the MPs have claimed. Okay. And this is over 315 of them. They have claimed £420,000 for their second homes for energy expenses. £420,000 for the last 3 years in energy expenses. And let's talk about, you know, for the Twitter storm tomorrow, let's use some of these facts, right? But let's name and shame the MPs that are claiming for them, right? Let's put them in there, okay? And I think Extinction Rebellion, let's make some big cardboard cutouts of these MPs and what you feel about these MPs who are claiming these gross amounts for their second homes, right? Liam Byrne, Labour. So anybody who lives in his constituency in Birmingham and he's your MP, pay him a visit and say to him, why have you claimed £7,808 for gas and electric in the past 3 years? Yeah. He's one of the worst offenders for claiming for gas and electric on his second home in the last 3 years. You know, that's like somebody's energy bill for 3 years. Why is he claiming that? And then you've got Matt Hancock, the former Secretary of State for the Department of Health and Social Care, right? He claimed over £4,000 on his heating oil for his country pad. You know, I mean, these MPs are claiming things, you know, for things like a heated stable for their horses. You know,
Yeah.
it's absolutely ridiculous. And then, you know, you've had, and let's talk about, well, yeah, does anybody know where Rishi Sunak is? If anybody knows where he is,
He's in his third. He's in his
12th
third of
home.
16 houses, isn't he?
I mean, let's just, you know, look at him, you know, putting planning permission for a swimming pool and a gym and a tennis court in his mansion in Northampton, right? His wife's a billionaire who's got 12 million from dividends from a Russian company. So she's not tiny, you know, total hypocrisy from there. But when this photo stunt of him filling up a car in outside a petrol station, right? It was a Sainsbury's employee's car. It wasn't his, right? He didn't have a clue how to fill it up. He's got 4 cars, this guy, by the way, right? Then he says about the bread, how many different kinds of bread he eats. It's like 3 or 4, right? We can't even afford to have one loaf of bread with the way prices are going on. And then he's throwing it up about the 4 different types of bread that they eat, the 4 cars that he's got. You know, there's millions of us who can't even afford to have a car or anything like that. We simply can't afford to have one, you know, and transport costs are going through the roof, and that's becoming a luxury to travel on public transport as well. And he's just
if you can even get one.
touch. He's so out of touch. And I think this is a message to Sainsbury's, you know. Perhaps you should send Rishi Sunak a reward card for the points that he went to the petrol station, you know. But the fact that, you know, it's a huge kind of, you know, let them eat bread kind of, you know, thing. They are
let them eat. Let them eat nothing, isn't it? Let them eat nothing. Let them starve. You know.
Yeah, but that is the absolutely sickening message. Oh, I can eat 4 different kinds of bread in our house. There are mums and dads going without food for days to feed their kids, to make sure their kids have got something. They, you know, they can't afford to keep their kids warm. And here he is going off to California for his 5th home with his 4 cars and his 3 different kinds of bread, wearing his 350 quid pair of shoes. And there are people starving here. There are people homeless here. What he needs to do is get his ass back here and start dealing with this, but they don't care.
That's because they actually only work for 100. Was it 110 days of the year? That's all they work, because they're off on their Easter holidays now, and they get 13 weeks, I believe. So who out of any of us gets 13 weeks off? I don't know anyone. Free studying.
I think the thing is, what we need to really get out to the wider public, you know, and you're seeing with like older people who've, you know, had the triple lock taken away, the over 75s TV license taken away, you know, when you're seeing winter fuel, you're seeing the winter fuel deaths removed. Yeah, and you're seeing the winter fuel deaths like in 2008, before the pandemic, they were the highest they ever were. You know, you're going to see next winter, you know, the winter fuel deaths are just going to go through the roof. They will not be able to count them. But I think the really important thing to say here is people are dying now. You know, people have been dying for 12 years and before that with horrendous cuts, you know. And I think disabled people are saying, you know, stop saying it's a recent cost of living crisis, because it isn't. It hasn't been for us. We're in the position now of barely surviving or dying, you know. That is where we're at. There's millions of people on their ass who haven't got this money to pay gas and electric companies, who haven't got this money for social care charges, who haven't got this money for council tax increases, who haven't got it. And what you're going to see is people chucked out on the street because they haven't got, you know, the money to pay all of this. You're going to see homelessness rise. You're going to see poverty rise. You're going to see people plunged into poverty who weren't before this. You know, we know all about that, you know, but the important thing is what do we do about it? You know, we can complain. It's what do we do about it? Which is why campaigns like the Big Power Off are massively important to get involved in, to throw your support behind. You know, shame the MPs who have been claiming for their second homes and their gross energy expenses. If you're clever of making snappy memes, right? Put Liam Byrne claimed £7,808. You know, hashtag Big Power Off, you know, shame them. And let's talk about, you know, the 1st of April when we had the first Big Power Off, the MPs got you know, another 2,000, you know, 2,200 a year. So their basic take home pay is £84,101. That's without all the different bits they get added on. And, you know, many MPs have second jobs. I think it's totaling like what they get from second jobs, all of them, over £6 million, you know. And here they are. You know, we had Kit Malthouse the other day. He's on £114,000 and something, probably. Oh, I can't afford my energy bills. You know? And you absolutely hypocritical, condescending, patronising bastard for saying that to us. You know?
when we're on £6,000 a year, £6,000 a year, and then we can get sanctioned at any moment, and have absolutely nothing. And then, if you go to the DWP and ask for a food bank voucher, they say to you, we don't have to give you a food bank voucher. You're only entitled to a food bank voucher twice a year. Well, so what do you do for the rest of the year then? Starve? And all those MPs that are standing to doing photo shoots outside the latest food bank they opened, nobody can get a voucher to go to that bloody food bank. And even if they could, they can't afford to cook that food. We've got people that are refusing certain types of food at the food bank because there's no point in them taking it because they can't afford to cook it.
No. I mean, we've got, I shared this story just over a week ago, and it broke my heart, really. Just 73. She's on a state pension, you know, pay-as-you-go meter, and the charges of the pay-as-you-go meters are absolutely horrific.
It's double already, isn't it? What somebody else pays on an ordinary meter.
Her neighbour's struggling herself, and she's in dire poverty with 2 kids, and she's been going without to feed them, and she hadn't seen her neighbour for a couple of days, so she went round to see if she was okay, and to find that her neighbour had been sitting in the dark for 3 days because she had no money to put on her key meter. She had no money to switch on the electric kettle or anything like that, you know. And all she had, the neighbour went to see, was a £5, right, in her pocket. She gave it to her neighbour so she had some money to make a cup of tea with. What kind of country is this? When we are allowing a 73-year-old right, on a state pension to sit in the dark for 3 days. You know, what kind of is this? What kind of country allows disabled people to die and think that's okay? You know, oh, it's not happening. Oh, it well is. It's been happening for years. And I'll tell you something now, you know, why are we not, for those who are able to, get out on the street and shut this country down? That's what I want to know.
We need a Women's Day strike, and
it needs everybody. It needs everybody out to say enough. You know, if we took the power back for the poll tax, make this cost of greed crisis, this government's poll tax, if we could have got rid of Thatcher in 1990, we can get rid of fucking government. They know.
Right? They know. That's why they got rid of Jeremy Corbyn.
Well, we've got to stop it.
But,
you know,
Can we
when you're
bring Sean in, please, Gaz? Because I'm aware, sorry, Paula, I'm aware that we're running out of time and we've only got 10 minutes left, and we've got so many questions, I think, Sean, haven't we? So please get ready, Paula, to answer some questions. Are you muted again, Sean?
Right, I'm ready. Okay, so yeah, we've got loads of questions. So one of the first ones is from MD Genjin. I love some of these names on YouTube. And he just going on from what Paula has just brought up. How can we make people more aware of this? Can we please also hold a mother of all rallies soon to finally end Tory rule? The government disobey protesters almost all of the time. And then he goes on to say, giving last year's European Super League protests a run for their money. So, yeah, a mother of all rallies would be great.
If it was about football, they probably would get more people.
I think, to be honest, as more and more people are becoming affected by what's happening now, you know, more and more people are getting angry and want to do something. There's loads of ways people can get involved in fighting back. The campaign on the 10th is so massively important, the big power off. Join in and at home, and if you can reduce energy consumption on the 10th, then great. You know, share your story. That's so important. Everyone's got a voice and everyone's got a story, and we need to hear more stories. That's really important.
And if you want to be anonymous, isn't it? If you want to be anonymous, you can't. If you're living in fear.
People are frightened of sharing, you know, having their name to a story, we can anonymize that story so that people's names are not put onto that. But if the media do want to speak to the individual, we could have a way of protecting you, you know, from any abuse or anything like that. People's Assembly have got local groups that people can join in and link in with. You know, Dpac have local groups across the country. You know, if you're a disabled person, join Dpac. Disabled People's Direct Action Network. Also, I'd say join a trade union. There's Unite Community. If you've got the money, like 50p a week to join that. If, you know, there's power in a union. You know, you see what's happening in New York at the moment, you know, when they've just won against Amazon, and there's some amazing campaigns that are doing some absolutely brilliant organising on the ground and everything, like United Voices of the World. You know, when you fight back collectively, you're actually winning. So I think it's really important. And you look at Bart's Serco campaign, you know, they've been taken back in house. You know, they've, you know, got the pay rise that they've demanded. They've got their workers' rights that they've demanded, and they've been taken back in house. And I was really proud to have a part in that campaign. It wasn't very nice being manhandled by a security guard last July, but it was giving the workers power to, you know, fight back and to win. So there's many, many ways, and I haven't got long to say, but, you know, we have a voice. Use it. You know, turn the anger into action, and there's thousands of ways. Sign petitions, contact MPs, contact your councillors, vote in the local elections. You're not happy with your councillor, right?
Vote them out.
There's a way to have a say. You know. Yeah. You know, that is really, really important. But spread the word about campaigns like this with big power off. Get your neighbours, get your family members, get your friends, get everyone in the street to join in. There's posters you can download and put in windows. Loads of ways to get involved. I'll be joining in on the 10th, so get involved.
We have a question from, or a comment really, from Wendy Fell on Facebook. She says, Paula, we're organising a cost of living crisis rally in Northallerton, North Yorkshire, which is Rishi Sunak's constituency seat. We're taking the loan shark postbox toppers to Northallerton too. What are them? What are the loan shark postbox toppers?
Wendy, she crochets like these
oh yeah, we've got some of those. Yeah.
And obviously it's to highlight that Rishi Sunak with the £200 loan is a loan shark, because you've got to pay the £200 back over, you know, 40 quid a year. So over 5 years, it's like £3.33 a month is going to be added onto your monthly energy costs when people can't afford it. So yeah, Rishi Sunak is a loan shark. So, you know, it's going back, you know, it's a great idea to keep going back to Northallerton and just getting out to the Chancellor's constituency and saying, look, this is what your MP, who's Chancellor of the Exchequer, is doing. How can you vote for this guy? This is where, you know, we done a great campaign back in 2015 when we supported the Sack Esther McVeigh campaign. And we, you know, we went out to the constituency and really, you know, we leafleted, you know, we had the blonde wigs and everything like that, dressed up as Esther McVeigh, and we really hit her constituency, you know, and said, you know, get rid of her. She's Secretary of State for the DWP. They have a really important part to play. Get out into the constituency MPs, you know, their ministers and everything, and show the constituents what they're actually voting for.
Yeah,
you know,
Esther McVeigh.
They're impacted by these cuts as well. So Wendy, loads of luck with your campaign in Northallerton. Unite Community members in North East Yorks and Humber were out a few weeks before with the little red boxes, we can't afford to live, for the spring statement, which had nothing for disabled people in there at all. It was just crap, you know. So yeah, campaigns like that, you know, snappy protests where you've got memes, you've got props, you know, you're clever, and it gets good graphics and everything.
And let's take control of the narrative, don't you think? By you're saying the cost of greed crisis. Let's rename it the cost of greed crisis. And every time someone says, "Oh, cost of living," say, "No, it's the cost of greed."
Throw the words that they call us back at them. The biggest scroungers are the ones in Parliament. It isn't us, it's them. Throw those words back at the shareholders and the conglomerate CEOs who are tax avoiders, right? Benefit fraud is like 1.7%. It's so minuscule. Tax avoidance is over 90%, right? The biggest scroungers are the MPs who are claiming for this and claiming for that, and the tax avoiders. Let's nail these bastards to the wall and hit them where it hurts, right in the pocket, with the big power off.
Nicely said, Paula. I couldn't agree more. And Wendy, if you're still watching us, if you can get in touch with us, you can email me at admin@resistfest.co.uk. Please let us know some further details about that, what day it's going to happen, what time people are meeting and where, and we'll get that information out for you, both on our social media and out to our members. Emily Morton says she applied for PIP back in 2014 and was refused. She says she's been told to reapply, but the stress the DWP has caused is unbelievable. They just want you to die. That's exactly how they make me feel. They don't care. She says she's on the old prepayment and system and just managed to top up her electricity before the 1st of April, thanks to her family. Hopefully she won't be affected by increase for a few months, but prices are still going up. G-Man Rules, aka Rotten Ruby, he says, I was left by British Gas for 3 weeks without gas or electricity, couldn't use my stair lift, was freezing cold. They switched me to a PP meter and their stupid systems didn't allow me to top up my meter. I can barely walk at the best of times. They didn't give a damn about me, took over £100 from me for top-ups without my meter actually topping up, had to call them every night to ask them to fix it. I mean, these are just heartbreaking stories, aren't they, Paula?
We hear these stories every day on independent media as well, as I'm sure you do, Paula.
What I would say with that situation, and my heart goes out to him as it does to Emily, what I would say is put a complaint in to the Energy Ombudsman, right? You can do that and explain the situation. We've had disabled people doing this quite a bit recently. Put a complaint in to Ofgem and get this seriously looked at, because there's something seriously wrong, you know, with companies like this who are doing that. Put a complaint in. You know, if you need support to do that, we'll do all we can to help you to do that.
Yeah, exactly. And it's you know, it's not just disabled people that this is affecting. It's
Everyone.
pensioners, it's students, it's people
Yeah.
who are on low pay, who are on, you know, contracts, you know,
Everyone.
zero
It's
contracts. It's
everyone, yes.
everybody. Yeah.
Unless you're
We
really
are the
rich,
99%.
unless you're really rich and a multi-millionaire and a billionaire, it's affecting everybody. You know, if you're not impacted by the costs, you will be. And then when in October, and what the government did on the 1st of April as well was fucking callous when they cut the warm home discount for 300,000 disabled people, and you know, those on attendance allowance. That's just callous. But the word that a lot of people, you know, disabled campaigns have used. Let's talk about this word here. This is about eugenics. Right? It's to kill as many disabled people and older people and put as many people into poverty as humanly possible. It's all about greed above profit. It is literally profit before people. Well, we've got to turn it around, the narrative, people before profit, and the only thing they understand is money. So let's hit them in the money pocket. Then they won't be able to use their private jets and their castles and everything else, because they won't be able to afford to when their profit margins go right down, you know. And I think that's important, is we've got to take the power back. We are, believe it or not, and people may not think it, we are the ones with the power. Let's take it back and smack it between the eyes with them and say, right, enough's enough. We're going to hit you where it hurts.
Paula, can you just, before we finish, can you just remind everybody when the Twitter storm is going to be?
Yeah. Right. The Twitter storm for the Big Power Off will be tomorrow, which is Thursday, the 7th of April, and it is 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. on Twitter. So if you see things by Dpac Sheffield, me, I'm at Paula Peters 2 on Twitter. If you see anybody tweet with the hashtag Big Power Off, retweet it. Share your story. Dpac Sheffield, working so hard, bless them. They're captioning videos. Make a 2-minute video if you've got the technology to do it and you feel safe to do that. And Dpac Sheffield will caption it and retweet it. Retweet about MPs. Put name and shame them. Hashtag Big Power Off, name and shame or something. But get that hashtag trending. Then on the 10th, which is Sunday, 10th of April 2022, okay, you know, put a poster up in the window, tell your neighbours you're joining in the Big Power Off. You know, if you can reduce your energy consumption by not boiling the kettle as much, not having, you know, many showers or something, you know, that's where it can hurt the energy companies. But what if, and we know there are disabled people and older people that can't do that. So what we say is, we need your stories. And if you're frightened of having your name aired out there, we can do that anonymously. But what I say to you is, we're all with you. You know, we're there to support you. We're going through the same thing as you. But the thing is to take the power back. Let's make this bloody massive. And there's a lady called Karen Brady who's also campaigning on the same day, that at 10 p.m. on the 10th, turn your power completely off at 10 p.m. on the 10th of April.
Let's shut the grid down.
And let's shut the grid down, you know? So I think there's really, really important messages within all of this, is take the power back and hit the energy companies really where it hurts. We're fed up with corporate greed, not just with the energy companies, with private providers in the NHS who are making zillions out of, you know, private companies and everything, the Richard Bransons and all the rest of it. Let's hit these bastards where it hurts. That's right in the pocket.
Cost of greed crisis. Well, I'm sorry we haven't got any more time for any more questions. I'd like to really thank, well, we all would really like to thank Paula Peters for taking the time to come to talk to us. Sean, for those fantastic questions. Our audience, you're wonderful. And please do the Big Power Off Twitter Storm Thursday. 10th is get out there and switch everything off. Let's switch big power off. The cost of greed crisis is going to be no more. Bye-bye.